Hello, my dear friends. Today I want to share something very personal and honest with you. It's my story, a simple story that many of you might relate to. The title of my story is From Silent to Fluent, My Alone Time English Practice. This story is not about some magic trick or quick formula to learn English. It's about how I, a simple girl living in the United States, practiced English alone and moved from silence to fluency, step by step, mistake by mistake, and with so much emotion. Please remember, my story is not complicated. It's a story from my heart, and I'm sharing it in simple English so that every reader, no matter if you're a beginner or intermediate, can understand it easily. I didn't go to a fancy class. I didn't have a personal tutor. I didn't even have friends who practiced English with me. I had only myself, my mobile phone, and my desire to speak fluently. I was silent for a long time, but I didn't give up. I stayed with English like it was my best friend, and that changed my life. So now I'm going to take you into my world and show you how I became confident in speaking English just by spending time alone. I hope you feel connected, and maybe, just maybe, you'll find your own story inside mine. Hi, my name is Emily. I'm 24 years old, and I live in a small town in Ohio, United States. My family came from Mexico when I was very young, so my first language is Spanish. But because I grew up in the U.S., I had to face English every day, at school, at the grocery store, even at the doctor's office. Still, I was always shy. I understood English. Yes, I could read and write English, but when it came to speaking, I froze. Every time I opened my mouth to talk, my heart beat fast, my tongue got confused, and my voice became very small. I didn't have many friends in school because I was afraid of speaking. I remember once my teacher asked me, "Emily, can you read this paragraph out loud?" And I just stared at the paper. My hands were shaking. My lips were dry. I felt like crying. After that, I promised myself, "Emily, one day you will speak English clearly and confidently. One day." But life got busy. After school, I worked at a coffee shop near my home. Customers came every day asking for lattes, cappuccinos, muffins, and I only used one word, okay? I smiled, nodded, said okay or sure, and that was it. I felt so small, like I was hiding behind simple words. So I decided to change that. I told myself, if I can't practice English with people, then I will practice alone. And that's how everything began. It started one evening. I was home alone, tired after work, and I opened my voice recorder on my phone. I just said, "Hi, my name is Emily." Then I played it back. My voice sounded so soft, so unsure, but it was mine. I felt something strange, not shame, not fear, just possibility. From that day, every night before sleeping, I recorded myself. I talked about my day. I talked about my feelings. Sometimes I said things like, "Today I made a mistake at work. I gave the wrong order. I felt nervous." Or, "I like the rain. It makes me feel calm." No one was listening. It was just me and my phone, but I was speaking. And every day I spoke a little more. One day, I looked in the mirror and said, "Emily, how was your day today?" And I answered in English. I know it sounds silly, but talking to myself became my daily practice. I did it while brushing my teeth, while cooking, while walking to work. I asked questions like, "What do you want to eat? How do you feel? What's your dream?" And I answered everything in English. I also started watching short English videos on YouTube, cooking shows, small vlogs, podcasts with subtitles. I would pause the video and repeat what the person said. I would copy their pronunciation. I didn't understand everything, but I didn't care. I was falling in love with English. After a few months, I noticed something. When a customer came into the coffee shop and said, "Hey, how's your day?" I didn't just say, "Okay." I said, "It's going well, thanks. How about you?" That small sentence felt like a big victory, and I kept going. I started journaling in English. Every night before bed, I wrote 2 paragraphs about my day. I didn't worry about grammar. I didn't check for mistakes. I just wrote from my heart. I remember one entry that said, "I feel proud today." I talked to a customer without fear. I said, "Would you like your coffee hot or iced?" And he smiled. I smiled too. My confidence grew, slowly but strongly. Speaking English became part of my alone time, just like brushing my hair or listening to music. Sometimes I laughed at myself. I made silly mistakes. Once I said, "I'm very boring," when I meant, "I'm very bored." I laughed so much later. But these mistakes were my teachers. I didn't feel bad anymore. I felt alive. Then one evening, I got a surprise. My younger cousin Sarah, who lives in Texas, called me and said, "Emily, your English sounds really good. Are you taking classes?" I smiled and said, "No, I just talk to myself every day." She was shocked. "Alone?" she asked. "Yes," I said. "Alone but not lonely." English became my friend. That moment, I knew I had changed. Now it's been over a year since I started my alone time practice. I'm not perfect. I still forget words. I still pause to think. But I don't run away anymore. I don't hide. I speak. I ask questions. I join conversations. I even started helping other girls like me, shy, scared, but full of dreams. And that's why I'm sharing my story with you. You don't need a partner. You don't need a teacher. All you need is time, honesty, and the will to speak. Start by talking to yourself. Use your phone. Use your mirror. Use your heart. It's okay if you sound unsure. It's okay if you feel awkward. What matters is that you try again and again. A few weeks later, I felt a new spark inside me. After sharing my recording with Sarah, I realized I wanted a bigger challenge and real listeners, not just my phone. So, one Saturday morning, I opened my laptop and searched Free English Conversation Group United States. My heart pounded as I clicked on a local meetup for language exchange in Columbus, about 2 hours from my small town. I remember driving there, gripping my steering wheel, rehearsing a greeting over and over. "Hi, I'm Emily. Nice to meet you." When I arrived at the cozy coffee shop that hosted the group, I saw circles of people laughing and chatting. My stomach twisted. For an instant, I thought about turning back, but then I remembered every night spent talking to myself, every mistake that became a lesson. I breathed deeply and walked in. A kind woman spotted me and waved. "You must be Emily. Welcome," she said, handing me a name tag. I slipped it on and joined a circle. When it was my turn, I stood, smiled shakily, and said, "Hello, my dear friends. I'm Emily, and I've been practicing English alone for a year. Today, I want to meet real friends." Everyone clapped and cheered. My cheeks warmed, but I felt proud. We paired up and chatted in 5-minute segments. My first partner, Daniel, asked me about my job. I said, "I work at a coffee shop. I love making lattes." Then I asked him, "What do you do?" And he shared his story. For once, I felt the joy of real back-and-forth conversation, the pauses, the laughter, the mutual understanding. After the group, someone suggested I join their Facebook page for weekly online meetups. I did. Soon I was talking to people from New York, California, even Canada. Sometimes the Wi-Fi was bad and voices cut in and out, but that only made it more real. I learned to ask, "Could you repeat that?" And, "I'm sorry, I didn't catch that." Those phrases became my allies. Back home, I kept my nightly recordings, but now I reviewed them differently. I would listen for expressions I had learned at the meetup and in the online group, and I'd practice them until they felt natural. One evening, I played back a recording of myself saying, "I'm looking forward to our next conversation." My voice sounded confident. I smiled at the speaker on my phone. Spring turned into summer, and I decided to volunteer at my local library's English Conversation Corner every Wednesday afternoon. I set up tables, printed picture cards, and greeted learners with, "Good afternoon. Let's talk about our favorite movies." At first I worried I'd sound like a teacher, but I reminded myself, I'm just here to chat. We talked about summer plans and ice cream flavors. I felt happy others found their words the same way I once searched for mine. One sunny July day, the library director asked if I'd like to lead a small workshop on solo speaking practice. My pulse raced, but I agreed. I titled it, "Talk to Yourself: Simple Steps to Fluency." I shared my story, how a recorder app and a mirror became my practice partners. I demonstrated the journaling technique and led the group in a short self-recording exercise. Afterwards, several attendees thanked me and said they felt hopeful. That evening, driving home under a pink sky, I realized how far I'd come. From silence behind the coffee counter to standing in front of an audience, guiding them. My alone time practice had become an invitation for others to find their voice. Fall arrived, and with it came a chance to travel. I booked a weekend in New York City, partly for fun, partly to test my English in a bustling environment. As soon as I stepped out of Penn Station, I said to myself, "Okay, Emily, let's speak." I asked directions to the nearest museum, ordered a hot dog from a street vendor, and even struck up a conversation with another solo traveler on the subway. Each exchange felt like a small celebration. On my last night in the city, I sat in a cafe near Times Square and recorded a final message on my phone. "This is Emily, speaking from New York City. I came here alone." Over the next months, I found new ways to weave English practice into every corner of my life. I started a small blog, just a simple website where I wrote weekly posts about the books I was reading, the recipes I was trying, and the little victories I celebrated. I called it Emily's English Corner. At first, I worried my writing would be too simple or full of mistakes, but I remembered how I celebrated every spoken sentence, no matter how imperfect. So I celebrated every written post, too. I invited readers to leave comments, and soon I was replying to questions like, "How do you practice pronunciation?" Or, "What if I feel too shy to record myself?" Each reply reminded me that I was no longer alone in my journey. I had a community cheering me on. When winter arrived, I challenged myself to read a short novel in English every month. I'd pick titles with simple language, sometimes a children's classic, sometimes a travel memoir. Each evening, wrapped in a blanket by my window, I read a chapter aloud. My recorder captured my voice as I stumbled over tricky words and then gradually smoothed out my rhythm. By the time I finished each book, I could feel the story in my mouth. The characters' voices felt natural on my tongue. Then came spring again, and with it a special invitation. The library director, remembering my workshop, asked if I'd host a solo speaking marathon, a 4-hour event where learners could rotate through stations, mirror practice, voice recorder challenges, and live mini conversations. I said yes, though my heart fluttered like the first day I walked into that coffee shop meetup. I spent weeks planning. I designed simple prompt cards. Describe your dream home, tell a funny childhood memory, and created a gentle playlist of instrumental music to play softly in the background. On the day of the event, 30 learners arrived, some beginners who barely whispered, some advanced speakers who wanted extra confidence. I guided them from station to station, demonstrating silently at the mirror, then speaking boldly into the recorder then greeting a fellow learner with a clear, "Hello, I'm Crow. Nice to meet you." By the afternoon, shy smiles had blossomed into bright conversations. When the marathon ended, I heard whispers of gratitude. "I never thought I'd be able to talk for 5 minutes straight. This was so fun. I feel ready to speak to anyone now." My chest swelled with pride, not for myself this time, but for every person who dared to try. At last, one evening, I received a surprise email. A nearby university's adult education center invited me to co-facilitate a monthly online session on building speaking confidence. They had seen my blog and heard about the marathon. I paused for a moment, looked at my reflection in the dark window, and realized I was ready. I replied, "Yes, I'd love to." And in the weeks that followed, I led virtual meetings with learners from across the country, guiding them through gentle self-talk exercises, sharing tips on journaling, and reminding them every time that progress comes one word at a time. Now, as I speak to you tonight, I sit at my desk in Ohio, looking at a world that once felt too big to speak into. My voice recorder still rests beside my laptop. My mirror still hangs on the wall, but they are no longer tools to fix something broken. They are reminders of how far I've come. A few months after joining the university's program, I woke one Sunday morning with a new idea fluttering in my mind. I realized that while my blog and workshops reached learners all over the country, I still hadn't tried one thing I'd admired in others: a podcast. I imagined a series where I could speak freely about my journey, invite guests who'd practiced alone like me, and share simple exercises listeners could follow at home. That same afternoon, I set up a basic recording space in my room, a small desk by the window, my phone propped on a stack of books, and a cozy blanket thrown over my chair so I'd feel comfortable talking. I pressed record and whispered, "Hello, my dear friends. Welcome to Emily's Speaking Corner." And just like that, episode 1 was born. Recording felt different from writing. In writing, I had time to edit. In workshops, I had the energy of real faces in front of me. But in that quiet room, it was just my voice and my thoughts. I started by sharing one simple tip: how to pick 5 new words each week and use them in solo sentences. Then I told the story of the first time I asked for directions alone in New York City. My voice trembled a little on playback, but I pressed on. By the 3rd episode, I noticed I was speaking more fluidly, pausing less often. Listeners began to write in, sharing their own small victories, like ordering a full meal in a restaurant or reading a bedtime story to their younger siblings in English. Encouraged by their messages, I decided to invite a guest to episode 5. Through the Facebook group I joined, I met Maria, a woman from California who had practiced speaking to herself in front of her closet mirror every morning before work. We recorded over Zoom, each in our own homes, and laughed as we compared mirror faces, silly grimaces we'd made while rehearsing questions like, "What would you do if you won $1 million?" Hearing Maria describe her own mistakes and triumphs reminded me that alone time practice, though private, creates a deep bond when shared. The feedback we received after that episode poured in. Learners said they felt seen and motivated to try these exercises themselves. By winter, the podcast had grown to more than 100 regular listeners. I began receiving invitations to speak on local radio stations and to contribute short articles to community newsletters. One snowy evening, I drove to a small AM station in Columbus. Under the dim studio lights, I sat across from the host and found myself talking almost effortlessly about the power of self-talk in language learning. When we signed off, the host smiled and said, "Emily, your voice is warm and genuine. You make people believe they can try this too." In that moment, I realized that the shy girl who once hid behind, "Okay," had truly found her strength. Spring returned again to Ohio, and with it came a surprise email. A producer from a national public radio program had listened to my podcast and wanted to feature me in a special on creative language learning. My heart fluttered as I prepared. I chose 3 anecdotes: the coffee shop recorder sessions, the solo speaking marathon at the library, and the first podcast collaboration with Maria. On the day of the interview, I spoke from the same mirror-lit corner where I'd begun my recordings. When the broadcast aired, I heard my story echoing across the dial, and I imagined listeners in small towns and big cities pressing play and feeling, perhaps, a little less alone. With renewed confidence, I embarked on another project, writing a short ebook titled Whisper to Word, a guide to alone time English practice. I poured into it every exercise that had helped me: mirror prompts, voice recorder challenges, journal starters, and simple reflection questions. I wrote in a conversational tone, as if I were sitting across from the reader and passing them a warm mug of tea. When I finished, I uploaded it to my blog and announced it on the podcast. Within days, learners messaged saying, "Your exercises are so clear. I finally know how to start." My inbox overflowed with gratitude. As summer turned to fall, I found myself reflecting on how far this alone time practice had carried me, and how many lives it had touched. One crisp October evening, I received an unexpected message from a teacher in a rural high school in Montana. She discovered my ebook and used my mirror and recorder exercises with her students. She told me that her shyest learner, a boy named Jacob, had stood up at their school assembly and read a short speech in English without trembling. I felt tears well in my eyes. My simple methods, born in my quiet bedroom in Ohio, were helping young people find their voices across the country. That winter, I decided to develop an online course to bring these exercises to even more learners. I called it Solo Speaker Academy. It was just me on camera, sitting at my desk by the window, sharing the same mirror prompts, journaling starters, and recorder challenges I'd always used, but now packaged as short video lessons with downloadable practice sheets. I priced it affordably, even offering full scholarships to learners in need. Watching my first cohort work through the modules, submitting their practice recordings, cheering each other on in our private forum, reminded me of my own first hesitant whispers. And when one student posted, "I finally ordered coffee in English today," I felt that old spark of pride all over again. Spring arrived with another surprise, an invitation to speak at a TEDx event in Cleveland. Standing on that small stage under the bright lights, I introduced myself. "Hello, my dear friends. I'm Emily from Ohio, and I turned my alone time into my greatest conversation partner." I shared the story of my first timid recordings, the library marathon, the podcast, and the academy. The audience listened, and when I ended with, "Your voice deserves its spotlight," the room erupted in applause. On the drive home, I smiled, thinking how surreal it was that a girl who once dreaded speaking could now inspire hundreds in a single talk. Over the next year, Solo Speaker Academy grew into a vibrant community of learners from more than 20 countries. I began co-hosting live mirror chats once a month, where participants joined via video to practice self-talk in real time, encouraged by my gentle guidance and the camaraderie of fellow soloreneurs in language learning. We celebrated every milestone: a first complete sentence, a 5-minute monologue, the courage to record without stopping. And through it all, I kept recording myself, still journaling, still reflecting, because practice, I realized, is both a discipline and a gift. Now, sitting at my desk under the warm glow of my reading lamp, I look at all I've built: the blog, the podcast, the ebook, the course, the community. Each started as a whisper in my quiet room. Each grew because I dared to speak alone, believe in my own voice, and share my journey with others. My mirror still hangs on the wall. My recorder still rests by my laptop. And every time I practice, I feel that same gentle excitement. What new word will I discover today? What shy learner might find hope in my story? To you, my dear friends, I send this message. Your alone time is not empty. It is a rehearsal for your brightest conversations. Embrace your silence as the canvas for self-expression. Let your voice emerge, one sentence at a time, until your story becomes a chorus that reaches far beyond your room. From silent beginnings to a voice that echoes across towns and countries. This is the power of choosing to speak, even when no one is listening. And from my heart in Ohio to yours, know that I believe in you, every single word of the way. Months later, I found myself waking each morning with a new sense of purpose. The Solo Speaker Academy community had grown so vibrant that I realized I wanted to bring our work beyond the screen. I began organizing small pop-up practice cafes in local coffee shops across Ohio and neighboring states. I'd arrive early, set up a little table with prompt cards and my recorder, and welcome anyone who wandered by with a gentle, "Hello, my dear friends. Care to try speaking with me today?" Some people peeked curiously. Many laughed nervously, but soon they took a prompt card. Describe your happiest memory. Share your favorite childhood game. And spoke into the recorder, their voices filling the cozy space with raw honesty. By the end of each cafe, shy smiles had warmed into laughter and applause, and I felt again that familiar thrill of watching someone step out of silence and into their own strength. Meanwhile, I started collaborating with local libraries beyond my hometown. In small mountain towns and lakeside communities, I led weekend retreats called Echoes of Confidence, where learners paired solo practice stations with outdoor walks. We'd speak our sentences aloud as we strolled by autumn leaves or under winter's pale light, letting our words travel freely in the open air. One crisp November afternoon beside a frozen lake, a woman named Leah leaned close and said, "Emily, I never thought I could share so much in English." She took my hand, and I saw in her eyes the same wonder I'd felt the day I first pressed record. Back at home, I began drafting a memoir, a deeper, more personal book that traced not just my methods, but the moments of fear, joy, and doubt that shaped me. I wrote about the lonely nights when I felt too small to speak, the shaky recordings that became bedrock confidence, and the faces, Daniel, Maria, Jacob, Leah, whose journeys entwined with mine. As I wrote, I often paused, spoke a sentence into my recorder, and then returned to my manuscript, carried by the rhythm of my own voice. When the final draft was ready, I held the printed pages in my hands and thought, this is more than a book. It's a mirror for every learner who has ever whispered their dreams. Spring arrived once more, and with it, the memoir's publication. On release day, I hosted a live online launch beyond my usual podcast, inviting voices from 25 countries. We lit candles. We shared stories. We recorded our first chapters aloud. And as we spoke, I realized that what began with a single girl talking to herself had blossomed into a chorus of hope echoing across continents. Now, as I look toward the horizon, I feel both humbled and exhilarated. I am planning a nonprofit initiative to bring alone time speaking pods into underserved communities, offering quiet booths with recorders and mirrors in community centers and shelters. I dream of training mentors who will guide learners through self-practice workshops in remote villages and urban neighborhoods alike. And every step of the way, I'll keep pressing record, because my own journey reminds me that growth happens one spoken word at a time. My dear friends, This story continues in each of you. The silence that once felt like an obstacle can become your greatest ally. Speak, record, listen, and speak again. Record, listen, and speak again. Let your alone time practice shine as the spark that lights conversations in coffee shops, retreats by lakes, and stages under bright lights. From that first timid whisper to a chorus of confident voices, our journey reminds us that every word we dare to speak ripples far beyond our own rooms, into the hearts of friends, strangers, and fellow learners around the world. Below are several detailed tips and tricks to help you move from silent to fluent in your alone time English practice. Each one includes step-by-step guidance and examples so you can start applying them right away. 1. Record and review your voice. How to do it? Use your phone or computer's voice recorder app. Choose a simple prompt, e.g., describe your day. Talk about your favorite movie. Speak for 1 to 2 minutes without stopping. Even if you hesitate or make mistakes, listen back immediately. Note moments where you stumbled or mispronounced words. Re-record the same prompt, aiming to smooth out those spots. Why it works. You build awareness of your pronunciation and pacing. Hearing yourself objectively helps you target specific weaknesses. 2. Mirror practice for pronunciation and expression. How to do it? Stand facing a mirror with good lighting. Pick a short sentence or phrase from a book, podcast, or one you've written. Speak it aloud while watching your mouth, lips, and jaw movements. Notice whether your facial expressions match the emotion of the sentence. Repeat, gradually increasing sentence length or emotional intensity. Why it works. Visual feedback helps you develop more natural mouth positions for sounds. It builds confidence by letting you rehearse your next conversation in private. 3. Shadow native speakers. How to do it. Choose short audio clips, 30 to 60 seconds, of native speaker dialogue, news bites, interviews, or vlogs. Play the clip and try to speak in real time, matching the speaker's rhythm and intonation. Pause if you get lost. Replay a phrase, then resume shadowing. Record yourself shadowing and compare with the original. Why it works. You internalize natural stress patterns, linking word sounds and melody. It sharpens listening skills and reduces the translation lag in your mind. 4. Build a personal vocabulary journal. How to do it. Carry a small notebook or use a notes app. Whenever you encounter a new word or phrase, write it down. With definition in your own words, part of speech, noun, verb, etc., an example sentence of your own creation. At the end of each week, pick 5 to 10 entries to practice in spoken sentences. Record yourself using each in context. Why it works. Actively using new words cements them in your memory far better than passive reading. You learn words in your voice, making them easier to retrieve in real conversation. 5. Read aloud and dramatize. How to do it? Select a short article, poem, or dialogue. Read it aloud, first neutrally, then with emotion, happy, sad, curious. Try different voices for different characters or tones. Record these readings to track improvements in fluency and expression. Why it works. Reading aloud links recognition with production, improving both speaking and comprehension. Adding drama makes the practice memorable and fun. 6. Solo role-playing scenarios. How to do it. Imagine everyday situations. Ordering coffee, making a doctor's appointment, small talk at a party. Write a simple script or bullet list of the key lines you'll need. Act out both sides of the conversation, switching voices or physical positions to keep it dynamic. Focus on key phrases like, could I have, would you mind, I'd like to ask about. Why it works. Simulates real social interactions, so you're more prepared when the moment arrives. Repetition of common structures builds automaticity, reducing hesitation. 7. Set smart speaking goals. How to do it. Specific. I will speak for 3 minutes on my weekend plans. Measurable. I will record and review my session. Achievable. Start with 1-minute monologues, then increase. Relevant. Choose topics you care about. Time-bound. By Friday night, I'll complete 3 recordings. Why it works. Keeps you accountable and shows clear progress. Breaks a big goal, become fluent, into manageable steps. 8. Reflect and adapt. How to do it. Keep a weekly log of your practice activities. What you did, how long, what felt easy or hard. At week's end, review the log, celebrate successes, and identify persistent challenges. Adjust next week's plan to focus on remaining trouble spots, e.g., certain sounds, transitions. Why it works. Ensures continuous improvement rather than repeating the same exercises. Builds a habit of self-assessment that professional speakers use. 9. Think in English with a thought diary. How to do it. Keep a small notebook or notes app titled Thought Diary. Throughout your day, pause for 30 seconds and mentally narrate what you're doing in English, e.g., I'm walking to the kitchen. I need to reply to that email. At night, write down 3 of your inner monologue sentences. Speak them aloud. First softly, then with full volume and expression. Why it works. Trains your brain to operate in English without translation. Builds the habit of framing everyday thoughts as spoken sentences. 10. Learn through songs and sing-alongs. How to do it? Pick a simple, catchy song you enjoy. Look up its lyrics. Listen once, following along silently. Play again and sing along, focusing on matching the singer's pronunciation and rhythm. Pause on tricky lines, replaying and repeating until you can sing them smoothly. Record your version and compare it to the original. Why it works. Music locks vocabulary and phrases into memory through melody. Singing forces you to stretch out and connect words, improving fluidity. 11. Create video diaries for body language. How to do it? Use your phone or webcam to record a 1 to 2 minute video diary each week. Speak on any topic. Your day, a recent news story, a hobby. After recording, watch your video and note. Do your facial expressions match your words? How is your posture, eye contact, hand gestures? Re-record with improved gestures and expressions. Why it works. Integrates nonverbal communication, making your speech more natural. Builds confidence seeing yourself succeed on camera. 13. Teach or explain to an imaginary friend. How to do it. Choose a simple topic you know well, e.g., how to make coffee, your hometown. Stand or sit as if talking to someone. Explain the topic step by step in English, imagining questions they might ask. Pause and answer those questions as fully as you can. Record or mirror practice your lesson. Why it works. Teaching forces you to organize thoughts logically and use clear language. Anticipating questions expands your ability to handle unpredictable conversation. 13. Use flashcards with speech prompts. How to do it. On one side of each flashcard, write a new word or phrase. On the back, a simple definition. Shuffle and draw a card. Read the word silently, then cover it. Speak its definition out loud in a full sentence, e.g., resilient means able to recover quickly from difficulties. Flip the card to check your accuracy. Keep only the cards you stumbled on for extra review. Why it works. Combines active recall with spoken production, cementing both vocabulary and sentence structure. The quick-fire nature keeps practice dynamic and engaging. 14th. Improv storytelling with random prompts. How to do it. Collect 10 to 15 random images from magazines, online printouts, your photos. Shuffle and draw one image. Set a timer for 2 minutes. Improvise a short story inspired by the image. Describe the scene, characters, and action. Record or mirror practice your narration. Then switch to a second image and repeat. Why it works. Trains you to think quickly in English and flexibly use vocabulary. Makes practice playful, reducing pressure around perfect speech. 15th. Master tongue twisters for clarity. How to do it. Choose one tongue twister, e.g., she sells seashells by the seashore. Say it slowly, focusing on each consonant cluster. Gradually increase speed while maintaining clarity. Record yourself at fast and slow paces. Listen for dropped sounds or slurred words. Why it works. Sharpens articulation and trains muscles for tricky English sounds. Builds confidence in challenging your pronunciation. 16th. Practice with AI conversation partners. How to do it. Use a chatbot or voice-enabled language app. Initiate a free-form conversation. Ask questions, tell stories, respond to prompts, push beyond yes or no answers. Use follow-up questions like, "Why do you think that?" or "Can you explain more?" Review the transcript or recording to identify new expressions and fixes. Why it works. Offers instant, judgment-free interaction whenever you have time. Exposes you to varied language patterns and vocabulary. By weaving these additional strategies into your daily life through music, teaching, improv, and even technology, you'll continue to transform alone time into your personal speaking laboratory. Pick one or two new methods each week and watch how your confidence and fluency flourish together. Happy practicing,